Warning, this video discusses the following topics: ableism, child abuse, child abandonment, cannibalism, gore, and the general horrors you see within the game Poppy Playtime. If any of these makes you uncomfortable or triggers you, then please click off the video. You have been warned. I miss Orchid, but I can't bring her back without summoning an entire fandom. I wonder if I could bring her back and fit her into here, though. I could fix her! I can make her better! I can make her right! Maybe now you'll see reason from the wrong side out. Hello dear viewer, and welcome to another speed paint where I up about my OCs and their stories. Today is a character I am so excited to talk about and have missed greatly. Orchid. Now, before we continue, I just want to clarify some things for those who might recognize her, because yes, Orchid is not a new OC. I've actually had her for nearly 3 years now. Orchid was originally my Rainbow Friends OC, and you see her in some of my most popular videos. Overall, her and that fandom was a big era for me, but I have left the fandom and I made another video stating why, so I'll link that in the description for those who haven't seen it. And for that era's fans, no, this doesn't mean I'm coming back. In fact, this was the last thing that tied me to it. You see, despite the drama, I had so much fun drawing them, Orchid especially, but I couldn't draw her anymore without summoning the fandom, and I didn't want to deal with that. Until I realized I could put her into another fandom and not even have to change much of her original story structure. She finally gets to be put into the darker setting that I originally envisioned her in. So, without further ado, I present to you the new Orchid and the PETAL Plushies. In 1972, Sophie Richard, a 7-year-old girl, was removed from an abusive household and put into play care. Files say she was verbally, mentally, and physically abused by her father, with no other family to turn to. Upon entering play care, she was labeled as a troubled child. She was extremely sensitive to sounds and textures, quickly becoming highly stressed and emotional when triggered. She would also not remain still, pacing before bed or wiggling in her seat, which others blamed for why she could not focus on certain tasks. However, if we were to look at this from a modern-day perspective, she would be diagnosed with autism and ADHD. Because of those traits, no family kept her for more than a few weeks before bringing her back, claiming she hadn't opened up or was breaking down for no reason. One pair even claimed she was a changeling. Now, keep in mind this is the 1980s. There was a lot of ableism and sexism in this era. In 1985, there was a small art contest for the orphans of Playcare, where they could draw their own toy for a chance to have it be made into official Playtime Co. merchandise. The winner of the contest was a purple weighted plush called Orchid, drawn by Sophie Richard, and a few months later, the PETAL Plush line was released to the public, containing 5 members: Open Orchid, Odd Azure, Happy Hallie, Silly Tilly, and Laffy Lance. Each plush was furred, weighted, and based on different flowers. Azure was based on forget-me-nots, Hallie was based on green gambler hellebores, Tilly was based on a tiger lily, and Lance was based on a lance leaf coreopus. Sophie, of course, was the first one to get an Orchid plush, and it hardly left her side since. She would carry it everywhere. To school, to sleep, even when she was playing with the other kids. It calmed her down and felt right in her arms. She would lay it over top of herself or put it in her lap to fidget with. It ended up helping her focus better, which lifted her grades up, and she was able to find better coping mechanisms for her disabilities. As the years passed, Sophie grew older, and she still carried that Orchid plush wherever she went. Now a teenager, she was seen as a role model for some orphans, especially ones who were like her. From her own experience, she was able to help them when they were struggling, making sure others stayed away or letting them use her Orchid plush to ground themselves. She would also inform the other orphans of what helps when certain things happen. Despite all that, though, she never got adopted. Now deemed too old for most parents, and even though she tried to remain hopeful, in the back of her mind she knew no one would want a kid who would leave them in a couple of years. One who's already grown up. In 1991, not long after Sophie turned 16, she was selected for the Bigger Bodies initiative, being taken in her sleep and turned into the very toy she created. Experiment 1, 2, 3, 3. Open Orchid. When she first woke up, she was sore, confused, and distraught, but upon seeing Miss Gracie praise her for putting all the toys in the correct box, she was finally brought some adult validation that she missed. As a people pleaser, she was very quick to say and act like she had accepted her fate as a toy, but deep down there was a grief for a life that would never be. She was then set up to give tours to those entering Playcare for the first time, mainly new orphans to make them feel at home, though she would abandon these tours if she noticed an orphan struggling, and would go over to help them, sometimes having to stay with them for a while until they calmed down, which had led to complaints from parents who were also taking the tour. The other PETAL plushies were soon turned into bigger bodies, helping out with the tours and comfort of children. A 16-year-old boy, Levin Anderson, became experiment 1, 2, 3, 4. Odd Azure. Levin was brought in when he was a toddler, therefore has no memory of his birth family. Once he was adopted or aged out of the system, he would try and find them, but he was never given the chance. Similar to Catnap and the prototype, Azure follows Orchid around. He trusts her decisions, and he was one of the orphans she helped out. He has an attentive ADHD and was able to work on coping mechanisms with her. Bella Delaney, a 12-year-old girl, was turned into experiment 1235. Happy Hallie. She was brought in when she was merely an infant, having been left abandoned on the doorstep. Such a young girl who never really thought about why until she was turned into a toy. She never hung out with Sophie much, but she had talked to her on occasion. And finally, we have a 17-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy, Caitlin and Jacob Ebrose. Caitlin was a gifted kid, but in 1981 she began to falter. Her slipping grades and state became more and more concerning until they sent someone to check it out. Caitlin was attempting to make food for her younger brother, caring for him like a parent should. The house was a mess. Their lives were a mess. When asked where their parents were, the children replied that they were on vacation, and had been for the last 3 weeks. And this wasn't the first time it happened. The parents lost custody of the children, and they were placed into play care. If Caitlin and Jacob were to be adopted, they would have to be adopted together, which for some was a turnaway. In 1991, Caitlin had turned 17. In less than a year, she would age out of the system, and she had no idea what to do about it. They were both turned into toys later that year. At least they would never be separated now. August 8th, 1995, 11:01 a.m., the hour of joy began. Hallie, Tilly, and Azure stayed with the orphans, keeping them inside Home Sweet Home and killing anyone who dared step foot into it. If they managed to get past their security, that is. While those three roamed the halls for intruders, Orchid and Lance remained out front. Grabbing onto the nearest scientists, their heads would lift to reveal sharp teeth that flatten when the mouth is closed. This would decapitate or shred anyone who faced them. With the help of Catnap, they managed to kill all the workers in play care. And eventually, the hour of joy was over. And then there was the cleanup. They took every body, every piece of flesh that remained, and brought it deep down into the facility. It wasn't long before the orphans were brought down to the labs to be kept safe. Orchid would never forget the terror in their eyes. Once their comfort, now covered in blood and gore. But they were safe now. They should be grateful. They might not understand it yet, but this was for their own good. The prototype will protect them. He will bring them to a better place. She knows he will. He promised freedom from the massacre, but upon its ending it was deemed no one could leave, and that made sense. The risk was too high. They'd be caught by someone else. They would be torn open, taken apart, and put back together over and over again until the new scientists figured it out and the cycle would continue. Besides, it's not like they had families to get back to anyways. Without any more workers coming in, it didn't take long to realize that food would become scarce. For the most part, the bigger bodies got to feast on actual food, leaving whatever remained for the smaller toys. That was until the food ran out, which they then resorted to eating the bodies and other toys. It wasn't uncommon to find the bigger body PETAL plushies around a table, trying to recreate some form of normalcy through dinner. Other toys were welcome to join, of course, trying to gain comfort or create a routine, especially those who followed Orchid. Many orphans that were turned into toys remember her kindness, how she helped them when they needed it. She was still a role model to them, along with any other teenagers who interacted with them. A lot of these toys are neurodivergent, and find each other with little vocal stems. It would kind of work like this. They remain loyal to Orchid and each other, a small faction under the prototype's rule. If Orchid trusts him, then they will too. Orchid is very loyal to the prototype. She sees him as a hero, a savior, and they are the saved. Without him, they would be forced to work and be tortured and work again. It would be their cycle for the rest of time, but he saved them. And yeah, they couldn't leave, but they couldn't do that anyways, so why even try? Besides, in her opinion, he's fun to hang out with. The guy isn't a 24/7 murder machine like some toys think. He needs a break every now and then. Everyone does. Her door is always open for him if he needs it. Orchid will listen to any of his commands. It doesn't take much to persuade her, which is what this artwork's description is. So kind of her to take the string. It's not wrapped tightly, as even the slightest flick of a finger is enough to persuade. A physical connection of loyalty between the savior and the saved. The only way she would be driven to question his orders is once food would run out, but he should have a plan then, so there's nothing to fear. Azure is fine with the prototype, as he will follow Orchid in whatever she chooses to do. They work better as a team anyways, so if they have a cool spider gesture thing on their team, then that's more for them. Tilly and Lance will listen when ordered, however, their view is more out of, I don't want to die, sure I'll listen to you, instead of, you saved us, we love you, almighty God. They would never say that to anyone but themselves though, and even the thought of full betrayal sends fear through them. And finally, Hallie. She hates him. She hates him so much. During the hour of joy, she only killed one scientist that was in the building before returning to the children and holding them tight, never going on the massacre ordered of her, and afterwards she was upset. Why couldn't they leave? Couldn't they just go into hiding or something? Maybe send others out and bring back food? Anything? They were promised freedom and they were just put into another cage, and the orphans, they were taken. They were put in a better place, but that could mean anything, and in a hell like this, probably nothing good. So she works similarly to Chum, a spy, a traitor no one knew of, bringing info back to Giblet or a smiling critter from Safe Haven, and still no one knows, believing she is just as loyal as the other petals. Over the next 10 years, they continue to do the same thing, eating whatever they can, dealing with the traitors, following the prototype's orders. But of course, in 2005, they had an intruder, and now they wait on the prototype's commands for what to do next. And that's their backstory. Well, mainly just the bare bones version of it. I purposely left some things vague so I can mess around with it later, but now we're on to the fun stuff, gameplay mechanics, because I have some ideas for that. The smaller petal plushies are pretty much just a smiling critters or a mini huggy reskin, and their mechanics work the same way, but their bigger bodies, petal plushies, are different. A thing I noticed when watching playthroughs is that for a lot of chases, you're in tight spaces, which slows the enemies down. I think that they would have to chase you in a more open area, but due to being a weighted plushie, they are slower. I also think that due to their age, they would be more intelligent. As in, if you jump across the chasm, they aren't going to jump after you. Instead, they will stop, think, then see if they can find another way to you, which gives you time to hide or escape. For Orchid and Azure, they will have a distraction feature. Orchid has 2 special interests, birds and plants. So if you want to distract her, then show her those and she will be interested in them. But you better run fast because it won't last long and she will remember that she was chasing you. Meanwhile, Azure is really just a chapter 5 huggy thing all over again. Those blue boys really like their pink and purple girls. Look, I just think it's really cute if while Orchid is talking or something, Azure's just looking at her with those big ol' eyes, just not paying attention to anything else. They have a really strong friendship and he is definitely crushing. Anyways, Tilly and Lance work the same, except they don't have a distraction feature, meaning you better run and you better run fast. Their jump scares would consist of them grabbing you with both arms, tilting their head to the side, and then opening their mouth to chomp on you. I think seeing their mouth open would be a more rare sight, as it also lifts their entire face, making it hard to see. Plus, showing it less makes it feel bigger when it does happen, which is part of the reason why I think they scrapped that one prototype jump scare. Now, for their deaths, I don't really have much planned out, it's simply just ideas. But there's 2 that I do have ideas for, the others I'm unsure if they'd even die at all, or if they'd just live on to see whatever happens by the end of the game. The first one who will die is Lance. I'm not entirely sure how or why, but killed by the player as you usually do. The second one to die would be Hallie, and I actually have a bit more of a plan for this one. Hallie would be traveling with the player at this point until Orchid, Azure, and Tilly come across them. Orchid's obviously kind of confused on why Hallie is just kind of standing there, walking with the player, just saying something along the lines of, "The butcher is right there, you can kill him. You're right in reach. Why haven't you done that yet?" And Hallie then explains that she is not working with the prototype. She's going to be helping the player. She's going to leave this place. And Orchid can come too. She doesn't have to listen to the prototype's demands. She doesn't have to stay here in this hell anymore. She could come with them. She could be free. Orchid expresses her fear. She's scared. Prototype would kill them if he found out. Hallie could just come back. They don't have to say anything even. She can come back, they don't say anything, and everything can go back to normal. When Hallie says that she isn't changing her mind, Orchid breaks down, collapsing to the ground. Hallie goes over and comforts her friend, giving her a hug. Orchid accepts the hug, and they stand there for a moment in each other's embrace. That is until Orchid either bites Hallie, causing her to die. It kills Hallie in some sort of way. And then there will be a chase that follows from there, not only including just Orchid, but also Azure and Tilly, as they're going to try and track you down. Orchid is also very much more upset. It could nearly lead to her death, but I'm not entirely sure. And finally, I wanted to talk about some behind the scenes stuff. When bringing back Orchid, I wanted her to keep most of her original look. Color, the round head, the petals, and I also wanted her to look like a toy from the 70s and 80s, but there wasn't much that didn't look like it already inspired something from within the game. That was until I remembered IKEA, because they do a little thing where they let kids design toys, and all the profit from those toys goes into organizations to help kids. So I let them do a similar thing here. For their mouths, I actually was inspired by that fan-made purple design from Rainbow Friends. Look, I had to see him when I was going to grab old Orchid art, and I haven't seen that sort of thing in this game yet, so I yoinked it as well. The Petal Plushies were almost called Petal Pals, but that already exists and has a wiki, so I just went to the next best thing. And Orchid was aged down to a teenager for 2 reasons. 1, so she could be an orphan in play care, and 2, there weren't any teenagers in the game yet. Or so I thought, because you see, as I was drawing all this, I was watching Spiff play chapter 4 again because I could not remember that chapter for the life of me. I only remembered those major things like Yarnaby, the doctor, Dewey's death, that stuff. I didn't realize a teenager was already in this and had a similar sort of thing, but hey, that's how the cookie crumbles. And at this point, someone should just hire me as a writer because I keep making characters that are similar to others and it is crazy. I also just really want to yap for a second about how much the prototype just tickles my TISM. Oh my gosh, I love him so much. He's so cool, you guys. Despite the pain that it is to draw him, he's so cool and I love him so much. He honestly reminds me a lot of Sun and Moon in a way, similar fixations, with being jesters, with a smiley round face that can spin. Also, of course, the Pomni stuff. Also, he reminds me a lot of Sin from Murder Drones. And Smile from Andrew Gaming, but no one here will know what that is, minus a few of my subscribers. Although you guys really should check it out, it's a good ARG. I also just want to talk really quickly about the art process for this, specifically this piece, because it took so freaking long, okay? Procreate says it took 13 hours and 40-something minutes. That's a lie. You lie, Procreate, because this thing took like 17 hours over the span of like 4 or 5 days. It took a lot, and there was also a lot of times where brushes, I didn't know which brush to use, things weren't working, had to go back and like fix it, and it took a while, but at the end of the day, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I want to draw more, I just need to figure out how to make it not take 17 hours to draw him. And yeah, originally this was supposed to be just like a regular lore piece, and then to fill in the empty space because I didn't like how empty it was, just put in the lyrics for Wrong Side Out. Once again, I have not stopped listening to it. I am a mad woman in this regard. I really like this song, and I really like Mob's version of the video, even to the point where I like, as I was watching it, I was realizing, oh hey, isn't that one bit in like the room where he comes into the like Poppy's little dollhouse room? Is that the scene with that one tape that we heard where Poppy was pretty much getting tortured? And I think I'm right on that. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, and that song came out on February 20th. On February 28th, the day I got my Apple Music replay thingy back to see what I've listened to most during the month, that thing somehow managed to make it in 8 days up to the top played song the entire month. Just then. I hadn't even like, I didn't listen to anything else. I have hardly listened to anything else. Honestly, today was the first day where I was actually like, I sat down and I put on a different song myself that wasn't Poppy Playtime related. It's like so bad that I can just recite almost all the lyrics, except there's like one where I do get like confused on. I can make you better. I can make you right. Maybe now you'll see reason from the wrong side out. I'll stitch you together and you'll get lost in the white. Maybe now you'll feel freedom from the wrong side out. I sometimes struggle with that and get the you'll feel freedom to you'll see freedom because I mix it up in my mind. But other than that, I'm pretty good with it. And with that, we can finally wrap this up. Whew, that was a lot. Okay. I really hope you guys all enjoyed my ramblings and speed paints. It was a lot of work, and I'm so glad I can finally bring Orchid back without worrying about her original fandom. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye!